Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Riley, and I am the Education and Outreach Manager for the North American Marine Environment Protection Association, or also known as NAMEPA. Change my slide here. We are joined this afternoon for our Mariner Welfare and the Human Factor Sea Safety Series webinar. But before we jump in to discussing that, I'm going to turn it over to Carleen Leiden-Walker, the CEO and co-founder of NAMEPA.
Well, thank you all for joining us, because this is a mission critical topic for us to be discussing right now. The human factor has so many different implications for our industry. In many cases, if you realize that no seafarers, no shipping, no shopping, if they really do underpin everything that we do in our industry as we support global trade. So taking care of the mariner, recognizing the needs of the mariner, developing strategies and products specifically for the mariners is something that I think we're going to be addressing today. And then there are Jason's on the call on this webinar as well. And NAMA has been looking after the mariner for many years, decades, and never has their role been more important than it is today. So we've got the traditional approach to taking care of mariners, but also new innovations on how we can better address the needs of mariners. So I'm excited to hear what's going to happen today. And NAMEPA is pleased to be hosting this series, because we all know that the underpinning, of course, is the mariner, but it has everything to do with protecting the environment, protecting their livelihoods so they can protect ours. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Carleen. So now to introduce that wonderful panel that we have this afternoon. If my computer will go forward. All right. So first on our panel, we have Dr. Jason Zudema, who is the Executive Director of the North American Maritime Ministry Association, or NAMA, and the General Secretary of the International Christian Maritime Association. Both goals of these organizations include professional development and networking for its members, but also providing a common voice for seafarers' welfare to increase collaboration with ports, the government, labor, and the wider maritime industry. Dr. Zudema has been involved with the seafarers' welfare since 1997 and is previously taught at Montreal's Concordia University. He currently serves as the Vice Chair of the Canadian National Seafarers Welfare Board and is a trustee of ISWAN, and is the producer of the Ship Welfare Visitor Course online for the UK's Merchant Naval Welfare Board. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jason.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Dean Karasis, and he is the president of Port Medical Management, and he has experience that spans over 30 years in the international maritime industry. As a native Houstonian and alumni of the University of Texas at Austin, he has spent his career in international shipping and freight, living and working in many of the largest port cities in the United States. His passion to improve lives through healthcare was spurred when he discovered a prevalent, but if not universal, complaint from ship owners and agents. Locating and delivering reliable medical care to foreign crew members was time-consuming and arduous. With his solution-focused approach, he developed a new service model to address this need. He founded Port Medical Management in 2005, which is based in Houston, Texas, which serves the requirements of ships in ports across the Gulf. And under his leadership, the company is now equipped to service ports of call on all 3 U.S. coasts. Currently, Port Medical Management is leading the way in matters concerning seafarers' mental health. This commitment has resulted in the creation of CCOM, a scientific and multifaceted program designed to identify, monitor, and address mental health challenges unique to life at sea. He continues to spearhead Port Medical Management, driving forward the company's mission to support innovation and provide cost-effective healthcare solutions in the maritime medical industry. Thanks so much for joining us, Dean.
Thank you, Megan.
And our next panelist is Pam Kern. She is a U.S. licensed clinical psychotherapist and maritime mental health expert. Her maritime career started in the cruise sector in 1996, on board ships as a guest relations manager, directing issues for 2,500 passengers. This led to her clinical mental health research and master's degree in advanced practice of clinical social work from the Columbia University. She's the director of the Maritime Mental Health Services for Port Medical Management, as well as a therapist in a private practice, treating many conditions caused by trauma. She drives maritime mental health conversations with first-hand ship experience with a profound understanding of seafarer dynamics and cultures on and off a ship. She's known for her innovative methods designing prevention tools and interventional mental health programs. This includes the CCOM app, and as a global speaker, she shares her expertise at various events, including the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands in the Philippines, Dutch Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, and many more. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon, Pam.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So mental health is an incredibly important topic. And so I'm going to ask our first question to Dr. Jason Zudema. What are the most pressing welfare issues currently affecting mariners, and how are they being addressed?
Yeah, thank you very much, Megan, for the question. This is a big question and one that's a long-standing question. I think there are different ways of viewing this, and different seafarers might answer the question in different ways. Some seafarers might say questions of the length of contract or other needs on board, just how they're on board. And what's important to know is the maritime industry is a very diverse group. You have so many wonderful companies that treat their seafarers really well, but then you sort of have lots of not so great companies, and we have issues of abandonments. We have issues of other really directly negative things that are happening in the wider world. But if we look in our current situation, one of the big things that affects seafarer mental health is the issues such as the Red Sea, and any of those seafarers who have this choice or are sort of being asked to sail through the Red Sea. It's a very, very dangerous place to be. Those who have to sail in the Black Sea, and just those who sail in all sorts of regions of the earth where there's uncertainty, where there's political uncertainty, where there's the threat of either piracy or other issues. This has always been the case, I think, in the maritime industry, but we've seen, especially in the last few years, where there are really, really hot points right now going forward. The last one, which really is close to my heart and close to the work of so much of our work, is the decrease in the availability of shore leave for seafarers. I just flag that as one issue, which maybe is something to talk about a little bit more. For many seafarers in the past, sort of going to sea, see the world, getting shore leave was really fun. It was great for mental health. It was also good for recruitment and retention, being able to see the world. But for many seafarers, especially through the pandemic, this was something not available at all. But what we're finding is it's not universally coming back. We're finding that there are many places in the world where shore leave is perhaps a thing of the past. It's too dangerous. Just there's no facility to have shore leave, but it needs to be promoted and protected. So there's a few different avenues of thought on some of the most pressing issues in mental health or well-being for seafarers.
Thank you. Dean, in what ways does this human factor directly influence safety and operational efficiency on board?
Well, the human factor is the biggest part, really. Starting at the top with the captain, who firstly sets a tone, the culture on board, but also, of course, training and implements regulations to be followed and sets their own rules. The ship is like a little city that he's directing. And we have, of course, there's the human element here. The crew is a team, working as a team to get these jobs done. A lot of pressure, but it's important, of course, that they're communicating, and that goes beyond just the workplace. Really, that they communicate, as a team and as a unit, and that there's a culture. And again, I think this can start at the top with even above the captain with the company, creating a culture and showing. I think that there's a culture of care, perhaps within their own work environment and community, and this can help with the crew members' general mental well-being, which can then translate into more efficient work, again, better communication and teamwork. So I think really, again, kind of starting at the top and creating that culture is the the biggest factor.
Thank you. Pam, can you share some specific examples of interventions that have improved mariner welfare? I mean, you've been in the industry for so long, you've been on ships, and now you're on that medical side. So what are some of those examples that you've seen?
Sure. I can give two. From the ship perspective, when I worked on board, what made me go into maritime mental health is I started to see my team at the front desk become more and more tired, and this fascinated me. Like, what do I do? How do I put measures in place to mitigate the fatigue? One of the things I did in the cruise sector, I started very locally. I gave days off, which I still get laughed at. But the human body is just not meant to work every day without a day off for months on end, 10, 11 hours a day. So I started a team of 16, and then we spread it to housekeeping. And we were able to make it work when everyone said we couldn't make it work. It's kind of that deeply rooted in tradition mindset. We've always done it this way. But we streamlined the work in order to give people days off. And it was fascinating to see the productivity increase, the happiness, the cynicism decrease. We actually measured it with a measurement tool, and we measured the beginning, the middle, and the end. Exhaustion was very high, then it went down. Then we took the intervention away, the days off away, and then guess what? Exhaustion went back up. So the data actually showed what we did was actually correlating, to the data. So I gave days off, and when you first joined the ship, you didn't work that day. I realize this is a cruise ship, and you've got way more people to be able to do that. But how could we copy paste that to other industries to make it work? I really think it starts with mindset, changing the mindset to make things happen. What I have seen on land, V-Ships is doing the POCs, point of contacts, to reduce stigma. So they've got in-house people speaking different languages within the company that their seafarers can go to speak about their problems and be like, well, is it a mental health issue or is it an employee assistance issue? So they kind of help them internally, maybe in their native language, native culture, to help reduce the stigma so that they can speak out. So I'd say those are two examples of both ship and shore.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, Jason, whether it's through NAMA or whether it's through your work within the port, but what are some of those mental health resources that are available to mariners while at sea, and how effective are they?
Thanks for the question. One of the big ones that we do, which is often hard to put into clear terms, is simply being a welcoming presence in ports around the world. So we're present in about 700 different ministries, locations under all sorts of different logos, many different societies that are known as different things in different countries. But that welcoming presence, where there would be either a ship visitor going on board a ship, or the bus driver driving the bus, or the welcome team in the Seafarer Center, that each one of those groups is a person to talk to. And many seafarers on a daily basis, as we're talking right now, thousands of them around the world are visiting these locations. It's a low level kind of conversation. It's not anything, obviously it's not anything professional, clinical, or anything like that. But it's really important, because seafarers might simply need that release, that very basic release of pressure from being in their workplace and getting out of their ship. So that's one of the most important that happens around the world. But the second level is that a number of our different societies have developed online tools, a lot of tools where they can speak to seafarers by voice or by video or by WhatsApp, where there are different groups. So groups like the Mission to Seafarers, Sailor Society, Stella Maris, the Seamen's Church Institute, and many of our local organizations, the German Seamen's Mission. Many of them have online chat tools, wellness programs, apps, and other things together. Our partners in IceOne and some of the other national charities have very similar things. There are a number of different helplines and resources to care. We also work with our partners in labor, but also in many of the other medical providers, where when we see cases that that need more concerted care, that need professional care, that would come from the likes of Dean and Pam and other groups, then we can be that listening ear to say you really ought to move towards something more professional care, and that's so those are a few different levels of some of the work we do.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, Pam, you had talked about this stigma. So how can companies reduce this stigma? And Dean, please feel free to jump in because you talked about that top-down approach. But how can companies reduce the stigma associated with seeking mental health support?
Yeah, good question. The current regulations, when a seafarer speaks up, does not align with the advocacy to speak up. So I have heard many seafarers who speak up, they go home, they get treatment, and they're told they can't come back, that there's a regulation 2 to 3 years, whether it's their crew manning agency, the third-party medical company, P&I clubs say, you have a mental health condition, you can't come back. You need to wait 2 or 3 years. And I would love to know the evidence-based research to support that 2 to 3 years because it doesn't exist on land. So is it actually internally we're stigmatizing? Because silence is not golden when it comes to a seafarer sitting and suffering in silence. It is better for a seafarer to be treated. The way they get treated is to speak up. So we need to have the advocacy align with the rules and regulations. But I think that's more in the P&I club. I would love to see P&I clubs, any other insurers, risk management companies, all get together to be on the same page to align that so we can reduce the stigma.
You know, I'll add to that. Yeah, you know, further to really what I did say earlier. You know, this does start at the top, and again, really beginning with the shipping company, of course, and the culture. But you know, we are traditional. Maybe a nice way to say it, industry, right? And we've always the way, you know, coming up, of course, the way that we always dealt with things was to tough it out, you know, not recognizing
The
that
badge of honor.
yeah, and you know, there has to be somewhat of a change in attitude at the top, and in our traditional ways of dealing with these issues, and also recognizing um, recognition that we all have issues. You know, again, the human element. As humans, as people, we're not just crew members working on a ship. We have the things we're dealing with in our private lives at home, with each other, whatever it may be. So, and we have the right and need to speak about these things, to deal with them properly, and so I think, you know, some change still in the attitude and mentality, perhaps of our tradition. You know, again, recognizing particularly for the younger crewmen, they come on, they sign up. Sometimes they're not totally aware of what they're signing up for, and training helps there too, of course. But giving them the opportunity to voice their concerns and their needs and their issues, and so that they can be dealt with, and so they don't turn into something that we'll see maybe later on the road as a medical issue. You know, it's good for everybody in that way. So I think also realizing that it's good for everyone. The crew member, what's good for the crew is good for the company. So that's all part of it.
Thank you. Jason, are there any specific training programs for mental health awareness among crew members?
Yeah, I would be very happy to share some. The Wellness at Sea program of Sailor Society, We Care, of the Mission to Seafarers, and there are a number of other different either local trainings or other kind of trainings that are available. I'm happy to share. I think one of the things that I'd like to mention, I'm an academic by background, though I don't spend my day job doing that academic by background, so I'm always keeping an eye on research. And one thing that I found, especially through the pandemic, is the explosive growth of the amount of research on seafarers' welfare in the mental health space in so many journals. I was at the International Maritime Health Association meeting last year in Athens, and one of the things the journal, the International Maritime Health Journal, noted was that even in their journal, there was a growing number of articles having to do with more things like mental health, bullying, harassment, all these sorts of things that are sort of related topics. And I want to underline that just how much not only official programs but research in this space is happening that is helping us understand in a much better and a deeper way the challenges of mental health. If anyone is interested in a reading list, I keep a bibliography on my website, nama.org/bibliography, and I try to keep a track of these things. It's sort of a blizzard of a wonderful blizzard of publications, and really top quality publications. So it could be of interest to people.
I
Wonderful.
support that. That's my go-to for maritime research. If I can't find it, it's really comprehensive. So well done.
Are we seeing any trends coming from those research papers that might address what training needs to happen to kind of take care of mental health in mariners?
I think a couple things, and maybe Pam and Dean would have a perspective as well. I think one thing is that we don't paint with a too wide a brush. That is, there are different segments to the industry, and people experience these things in a very different way. So whether it's U.S. mariners on U.S. flag ships, for example, or Canadian mariners on Canadian flag ships here in Canada, or mariners from other countries on different flags, that there are some distinctions between all of those different things, whether they're in the cruise industry or what segment of the industry, that each of those groups might be experiencing different things in a different way. A huge one, for example, is women. The difference between women's experience, men's experience on board. Huge new important research on these areas, which is really helpful to understand in more detail. I think it's unhelpful when, for example, we use individual statistics to describe the whole industry. That some rate of suicide, let's say, or some rate of some other mental health concern, that we paint the whole industry with the same brush, might not be helpful, just in the sense of developing individual programs for different groups. So I think there's again lots of new research that can help guide us in these programs going forward.
Wonderful. Pam, do you have anything to add, or Dean?
I read a lot of maritime research, and there's a lot that just sits on the shelf, but some don't. I like, in particular, Maria Carrera. She's with World Maritime University. She recently did a study in May 2024 on the concealed non-compliance of work rest hours, and it was quite interesting. The statistics, they found that crew were only compliant with work rest hour reporting between 11.7% and 16.1%. But when port state control compliance, came on there, they saw 90% or higher. Like, why the difference? So there is research out there that actually does take interventions from the research. I would love to see more, of that, and make sure it aligns, that's real and relatable, for seafarers.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, moving into regulations. I know, Pam, you had talked about it. Dean, if you want to jump in as well, but what current regulations are there to support mariner welfare?
I was part of a grassroots organization that started 3 years ago, and Carleen actually too. That's, I think, how we met Carleen. Ava Veldkamp, she wanted to start a group where we could get IMO amendments, and there were like 80 of us all over the world, and we were able to make that happen, to get proposals that transformed into amendments dealing with mandatory training for sexual harassment, bullying, and also psychological safety. So it's really neat when you come together as a group from all over the world and actually see awareness put into action. So that the last amendments, I think, are starting to get out there, because we know that in maritime things are historically not very fast. So the that in particular will help with psychoeducation, educating people what is sexual harassment and bullying and psychological safety, because so many different cultures involved, and it means different to everybody.
Jason or Dean, do you have anything to add?
I think there are. I think Pam, you had mentioned before the Maritime Labor Convention. They put out put out standards and regulations, industry wide, they're very general. I think that's good. They're probably the minimum. I think the higher standards need to be set. Again, I keep looking at the top, but within the companies themselves.
Thank you. Jason, how can companies ensure compliance with international welfare standards?
Yeah, I was going to follow up on the last question, but it can link with this one as well. So both ILO with the Maritime Labor Convention and then IMO with a number of different conventions have a lot to say about seafarers' welfare. So the ILO is between two meetings of its the special tripartite committee, and they want out of the MLC as a special thing in that it has continuous improvement built into it. So it has this committee that meets every few years in order to add and update the convention. It's going to meet next April 2025, and governments and then the social partners, labor and industry have to get in their sort of preliminary ideas for updates by September the 10th this year. So we're in that period right now where lots of companies, all the companies working together, all the labor working together, and then governments working together are gathering their thoughts on this particular thing. So that's the Maritime Labor Convention. The U.S. isn't a signatory to the Maritime Labor Convention, although they're keenly interested in its work. Still, it's important, and I think that's important. So there's the MLC, and then but the MLC touches on lots of things, but as minimum standards, as Dean had already said. But over at the over at the IMO, there's lots of other human element things that touch directly or indirectly on issues of seafarers' welfare. Historically, the IMO, as I'm continually understanding, was more technical in nature. But the last number of years, there's been lots of certainly statements coming out of the IMO that have to do with seafarers' welfare. But in a number of the different either training instruments or things to do with facilitation or other instruments, there are things that touch on directly or indirectly seafarers' welfare, well-being, mental health, etc. And I think then when national governments implement these or have their own implementation of these, that's another level. In Canada, for example, United States, for example, there's lots of different committees, whether it's with the Coast Guard or with other groups that are trying to raise issues of mental health and wellness. But my hat's off as well to many in the industry and many on the labor side of things. They don't necessarily wait around for IMO and ILL to tell them what to do. They're trying to do things internally. So I recognize, for example, the SIU here in Canada, who came out with a study on bullying and harassment on board their ships last year. And I know a number of different initiatives on the labor side on the U.S. side, where labor often is getting out in front of some of those regulations to also advocate for change. And there's lots of great researchers in that space as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now moving into the technology side, and Dean, I'm going to put this question to you so you can talk about CCOM and port medical management, but what role does technology play in enhancing mariner welfare?
I think this is plays the largest role going forward. This is the way to address it, in my opinion, going forward. So much of it we have innovations like, for one, Starlink, which has been a game changer on board, and that's a key because we need to reach these crewmen where they're at. This is something that Pam will always talk about, but where they're at is literally on their cell phones. Not during work, but we need to be able to reach them there, and with CCOM. So CCOM we started as a way to deal directly with the crew members with their mental health issues. Again, with my background and the 20 years that we've been working as port medical management, handling the medical cases, again, over 30,000 cases. We see so much repetition, and we've seen, particularly in more recent years, so many mental health issues come to light. And so many times where a crew member will say, I have knee pain or chest pain or something, and then he goes to the doctor, and oftentimes a chest pain diagnosis will be actually anxiety, and then he'll discuss the issues that confirm that, or even he's going in with knee pain, but he says to the doctor, I'm just here because I don't have anybody to talk to. I can't talk to anybody on board. I can't talk to anybody. There's no way I can communicate with anybody to discuss my issues. Help me, doctor, in some way. We see that, we've seen that so much over the years, and then again, of course, so much more during and since COVID, as everything in the shipping industry, I think, has kind of changed post COVID. So my solution to deal with this really was to create uh, a means to allow the crew members to directly communicate with a therapist. In our case, Pam particularly, who is the expert in this, I believe, uh, to share their issues, but firstly to evaluate where they are. What is their current status? We send them messages. We have an app that we have designed from scratch for very crew member specific, for them to very easily and briefly answer questions directed towards life at sea and life at sea and the life of a crew member specifically, and to gauge where they are. And then, of course, basis this, we're gathering data that we're dealing with them confidentially. This is for the crew member, and then gathering information also anonymously for the shipping industry and owners. But giving them the opportunity, then, if there is an issue, ideally, of course, there's not. There's, we don't want to say that there's issues for everybody that are elevated into and needing urgent attention all the time. But the ones that are, where we see they turn into something, tragic or drastic, as they continue to go unanswered or unresolved. These are the ones we want to be able to give the crew member a means to be able to talk, be heard, listen, so that they can work through their issues while they're working on board, not have to sign off, not have to have something, tragic happen, not have, something disastrous at times occur on board, as we see. So it's, I'll tell you, it's an obligation I felt on my side from my company, basis what I've seen in the recent years. And I'm doing it the way, again, using technology, designing the app. Of course, the internet is key, which we're seeing so much now that with the improvement with Starlink, and and giving it something tailored to give the crewmen an opportunity to speak directly and deal with those issues. That's what I've done. That's what we're trying to promote now with Seafoam, and we know that's really different than anything else out there. So that's Port Medical Solution. That's what we're doing currently, and there are others that deal with things similarly, more AI related, and I think AI has its place certainly. But my opinion, again, this is we deal directly, and this is a human. These are human issues, and they're all different. And I just don't trust that as much for the specifics and for the direct content communication with the crew. So we're doing this on a very human level, and it's a hard way to do it, but I believe it's the most effective and best way to do it. So it's the
Pam, do you have any?
Human and technology.
Pam, do you have anything to add?
We tried to meet seafarers where they're at. Knowing job jeopardy, job vulnerability is very real. How do you get a seafarer to say, hey, I'm struggling? And so we designed it with my former seafaring background, my mental health background, and with Martin Slade from Yale. And in around less than 10 questions, we asked very maritime specific questions. What are the determinants to negative mental health on board? And we don't ask like, are you going to harm yourself or others? Because that is a determinant, but it's not the only one out there. And hopefully by asking these questions, it does not go to the captain. We actually get it, and then we look at it. And we try to determine if we think that their answers are going in a negative trajectory, and we want to break that cycle of that negative trajectory so we can meet them where they're at. So it doesn't build and build and build, and then it becomes such a big problem that their relationship at home is sacrificed, their productivity is sacrificed, and the human element of safety, because obviously there's a correlation between your health and your mental health. So we really just try to meet them where they're at. There is going to be barriers. Yeah, they might not answer the questions honestly, authentically, because I don't know who you are. I have challenged that we have had crew members who have answered it, and I've spoken to them because I'm at the moment the only lonely therapist, but we're building out on that, and they all say the same thing. Oh, you were a former seafarer. You get it. You get it. So I try to meet them where they're at, that they're not going to be fired. We're not going to tell them the company to the extent of what they feel will, get them fired, and bring them back to their baseline. It doesn't take much. And as Jason had said before, that you don't actually even need the clinical therapeutic work. You just need somebody else outside of the ship just to listen. And the relief that they feel when you can just listen is so therapeutic in itself. So we just tried to develop CCOM to meet seafarers where they're at, and answer questions that we feel that they will answer honestly and authentically without job jeopardy, but also turn that down and try to overcome that barrier so we can have more intervention, and thus more prevention.
Wonderful. And Jason, moving that to like a company side, how can companies create a culture that prioritizes mariner welfare?
I really want to kick this one over to Dean. I think what Dean has been saying already 3 or 4 different times, that this doesn't start on board. This really starts in head offices. I've been at a number of different events in the last few months where just hearing the folks from head offices speaking together and hearing them prioritize this is such a transformative thing. You can see that they're leading from the front, and I think that's really important. That this needs to be on the agenda of those the highest up in the company, and that has a transformative impact on those lowest down in on board ships. So that really is an important thing, and I would you really echo what Dean has been saying as well.
Dean, do you have anything to add?
Well, we are seeing, we are seeing a lot of the companies. They're not ignoring this issue. They're actually being very proactive, and it's been, as I've been traveling a lot as well, and around the world, we've been meeting with a lot of different companies, and they are all looking to try to address the issue. They're not ignoring. So many of them, some of them are looking to us and what we're offering, which is great. Of course, we think it's the best solution. But we encourage them all. Many of them have already begun strategies and assigning people within departments and HR to try to implement their own standards and again help create that culture that I talked about too. So I do think, and we've gotten. There's great ideas out there. I mean, they're hands-on. They're dealing with their crew and their environment and their people, so they know. Maybe not every approach works for everyone. So theirs is more specific for their company. But we hear some very good ideas, and sometimes it's trial and error even that we've seen. But they're trying, and they're not ignoring this, and that is very encouraging, really. We're a global community and we're all in this together. And so I do think, the recognition from all of them and the work that they're making individually and as a group is starting to have some effect.
Wonderful. Pam, how do you handle welfare issues on a multinational and multicultural basis with crews?
Great question. There's no one size fits all. But we do have commonalities. We're all human and we want to be connected. Humans are wired to be social beings. So that being universal, let's connect on those universalities of wanting to be connected and wanting to be heard.
Thank you. Jason, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually both Dean and Pam. It's a question I feel like I'm asking something I should already know, but I'm happy to have two experts on the call. Are there limits to giving official like sort of therapy in terms of geographical limits in the world? So when you're giving therapy to seafarers on board, does it matter where they come from, what flag they're on, where they are in the world, and how do you navigate that? Because if you're a therapist registered to do therapy in a particular province or state or country, there might be limits to that. So how does that work when seafarers are on board and you have a therapist in a different country? Is there limits and legal liabilities when you're working from one flag to another, for example?
Yeah, exactly. In the US, there's rules, regulations. Canada there is. Every country has their own rules and regulations. In the US, you're licensed by state. However, there's pacts now out there that all of the states are getting together and saying, okay, you can cross over states. There's a difference between coaching and counseling. I would say the majority of the work of the interventions is coaching. That's a non-licensure approach. If you do need counseling, then obviously that's a different approach, and then you need to inform whoever you're treating of that. I have asked in many different states and many other clinicians in the US and abroad, and we all say the same thing. Pulling back, saying, hey, I'm not registered in your state or country, is that being ethical and safe? So we try to provide care and meet seafarers where they're at. That's reasonable as well as ethical.
And I think, just generally, as you're saying, around the world with the various cultures, I think what's important in our industry specifically, of course, we're dealing with so many various cultures, and uh, and that has to be part of the solution. In some ways, it has to be tailored. There definitely has to be the understanding of the industry, which Pam certainly has. Being a former seafarer as well as therapist, and we have, all of us, of course, being in the industry. But sometimes, in general, a therapist may not immediately understand some of these issues. In other words, a therapist who is not, intended to deal directly with crew and with the crew members and with the culturally different crew members, and to understand some of the issues that they may be facing, and how they all may think of them and react to them differently based on cultures and religions. And these are things that are unique to our industry, and it's just it's an important consideration. Again, we're considering it in everything we're doing. And my concern sometimes is that someone licensed, state to state is one thing, but country to country, they may not. They may say, okay, wait a minute,
country.
You do what in the engine room? And that, so it can cut through so much and help and be so much more effective for the crew member if we have therapists that are really dedicated, to the industry.
They're just actually, Royal Caribbean just posted a job for a crew counselor. It is the very first mental health provider on board a ship. I've been wanting to see this since I started sailing in 1996, and it's very interesting to see if the rest of the cruise industry will copy paste. I'm curious as to, where their licensure will be, because you've got the flag of the ship, then you have the license of the clinician, and then you have the nationality of whoever they're treating. So I don't know if they're going to be using the medical model for that and how that will work. And then I'm also curious about confidentiality, but I'm very excited that it's happening, and because that is truly meeting seafarers where they're at. Not telehealth, not on WhatsApp, not on a vacuum satellite, right on board. So from my experience, Royal Caribbean, they're the industry innovators. They've started one of many things as firsts. So it'd be interesting to see if the other lines also follow.
We'll have to keep our eyes on that. Now, Lisa, I have a question for all of you, and we'll start with Jason. Can you share any success stories or significant positive changes that you have seen with whatever work that you're doing, or any technology or anything that you're seeing positive changes in those mariners?
Lots of great stories. There's just day to day, lots of fun, small stories. But one that's just of general interest, and I think is something useful going forward. In the pandemic, one of the big things that all of our seafarers welfare centers were occupied with was helping seafarers get vaccinations. And in the United States, we helped more than 100,000 seafarers get vaccinations. In Canada, about 7,500 additional seafarers. Well, one particular port, Tampa Bay, in Tampa, they worked directly with the University of South Florida, I believe, the School of Nursing, to do all those vaccinations. And they found that was such a positive working relationship that they decided to actually, in the Seafarer Center now, just inaugurated just a few weeks ago, they actually have a health clinic in the Seafarer Center for both port workers, but also those coming ashore. So that's a positive relationships, gives more options for health in that area. It's ports are often areas where it's not easy to get if you have to take off work for a day to go drive halfway across the city to go for a visit to a clinic. It's not so nice. So now there will be designated days, I think, of the week where port workers or anyone else coming in off the ships can use that facility. So that's one example of a partnership between a local seafarer center and a new health clinic in that area.
Wonderful. Dean, do you have a positive story that you'd like to share?
Well, I can say particularly since we have really started our mental health program with CCOM, we're able to now really provide. I look at it kind of as a 360-degree care. We'll sometimes deal with traumatic injuries or say or issues, health issues on board, and crew members maybe. I'll give an example generally of an explosion that occurred on board. 4 crew members severely injured, burned. Some of them, one was admitted in the hospital for several weeks, as well as the others, and then they discharged and had continued care. And this is traumatic. We've always, over the years, of course, we deal with these cases. We deal with them medically, and that's so important. We get them eventually fit for duties for travel, whatever it may be, to go home. But meanwhile, what we can deal with now is their actual trauma and their mental health related directly to the issue or the trauma that occurred. In other words, in this case, the explosion and the burns. They're dealing with so much. They're dealing with having to. They can only sleep on their stomachs at this point. They're changing dressings. They're not in communication with their families. How would they go through their entire lives now, dealing with the wounds that they have, and how will this change their work going forward? All of this, they have no one to talk to, and we can provide that now and specifically in this case through Pam, these cases, and absolutely that makes a difference. It is so important and so honestly satisfying for me to know that we are able to, we're making sure they're getting the medical treatment they need, but it's again 360. Now we're giving them the mental health care that they need, and it is a complete care, and they're hand in hand in these cases, and they make a difference. They need this. We're able to provide it and offer it. There's many cases that where we've had it, and in many cases where we've issues that are arising on board where crew members may not be mentally stable due to extreme stress and anxiety. I feel could have been dealt with previously, but it's at that point, and we can involve Pam in these cases, or do our best to really intervene, through this channel, really through CCOM in our case, but. And it's made a difference. It makes a difference. It's something I'm very proud to be able to offer now, and and so we've seen a lot of these cases now in a general way, without getting too specific. Yes.
Wonderful. And now my final question. Pam, I'm going to start with you. But the industry is experiencing a global maritime shortage, yet it's not tapping into nearly 50% of its candidate pool. So how can the industry do more to recruit women, and what needs to change in order to make the industry attractive to them?
Update approaches to recruit. Using social media, meet them where they're at on social media, whether it's Instagram or TikTok. Seems unconventional in maritime, but advertisements on what are the benefits of going out to sea. Unfortunately, women still represent less than 2%. I wish it was more, but I would say social media. That would be my number one, go-to. Most people are on it, as long as it's done responsibly. And I think that would be the best way to go.
Dean or Jason, do you have anything to add?
Go ahead, Jason, if you do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is I had already mentioned this a big issue in research. Lots of great research in this area that can help guide policy, but also practice in this. Coming out of, just small things coming out of the last round of the Maritime Labor Convention, that there is a properly fitting PPE for all body types on board, and it's not just a one-size-fits-all type of PPE on board. Those things have a safety. There's a safety side to that, but also just general wellness, well-being when things are not provided for you on board. I've been at just this is a topic that comes up at many different conferences, but listening to female seafarers or different culture seafarers, just asking them what they might wish and want on board. But also, I'll even my group is taking this to heart to make sure that our seafarer centers are welcoming not just sort of one size fits all seafarers, but having programs for women seafarers, men seafarers, for seafarers from the different cultures and backgrounds, and having things that might be useful or cater to their wellness as well. We developed. I have a training program called Mari Training. And earlier this year, we worked with all of our female port chaplains and ship visitors and made a module just on women serving seafarers and serving seafarer women. And it's been one of our most taken modules to this point. It's really useful, practical advice for how to adapt our seafarers welfare work to serving women seafarers. So I think all of us, it's not just let's talk into the industry, but even just talk to ourselves. What are we doing to very practically to help?
I think there is a real issue, and it's of the shortage of quality seafarers available. This is something we're hearing more and more about. I learned what a big issue it is last year, really, at Crew Connect Global in Manila, and I think that one of the best answers for this is the recruitment of female seafarers, and I think that we're here. I can see the companies are actively doing this. We've seen a lot of them when we were in Dubai, Bahrain particularly. They've been doing a lot to recruit, and also they're experimenting again. They're trying to make it the best working conditions for the female crew. And so one of the things they've done, they would make sure that the two of them would be on the same shifts. And it's interesting. I mean, that's minor, subtle, but that was very successful. Made a difference. And I think, of course, training the men firstly to be able to work with the female crew. I think, and I do think. I think they need to make, as they're starting to do now, the more effort to recruit and attract these the female seafarers, because they can sometimes do the work of 10 men. I've seen it in my office.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, Dean, and Pam. Now I will turn it over to our audience. Do we have any questions to ask for our panelists before we wrap up this afternoon? Yes, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for a very interesting discussion indeed. And I wanted to commend and ask you as well about the last one, about females on board. And I think, yes, it is important, to work with the male part of the crew, because from the point of someone like me who was graduated from full male maritime academy, like in my deck officers class, they were only males only, and then worked on the ships where we mostly didn't have any females until like recent years. I can say that, and then transitioning on shore and working in office shore environment when you have normal 50-50 ratio, it is very different, and it's kind of a lot of problems come from the point that simply the seafarers, they're not used to work in the mixed gender community, so they even like don't have behavioral models for that. So the question is, do you think would it be healthy also, not just like you said, to put two females on one shift, but it's not always possible, because for the crew of container ship, when you have 22 people on board, I guess it's also important to hire on one ship several females, so it will be more like groups of people of different genders. Maybe that should be pushed as well.
In their case, this specific case that I was mentioning is a minimum of two. They were looking to do a minimum of four, again, through their little bit of trial and error and experimentation. I don't know that I can speak to what they've done and what's working, and I thought it was a very great approach, a good idea. This was Captain Yasser specifically at Bari was implementing this, but the solutions, a lot of those are internal, but should be when you see something that works, it should be adopted. But again, the men, a little bit further to what you're saying, the men have to be trained because this is new for them, and they have to be trained. So a lot of that, of course, does come from. I'll keep referring to the top, but they have to make sure that the men are trained and equipped to work with the female, because it's a little bit different. And of course, there's different physical requirements. That's about the only time there would be. But so you make adjustments accordingly.
Yeah. Thank you,
Alex. It's a really good point. From my own experience on ships, when I started, there were very few females, and at times, you think of a cruise ship, oh, there must be way more. There were times when I was either the only woman or the only woman American officer on board. I would love to see the approach of psychoeducation, taking psychology and education and educating males when they do get a female on board, either one or two. Okay, this is the way it's always been done. You might have the conversations in the crew mess or on the bridge that have undertones that could be considered offensive by another gender or another religion or another culture, and educating them that what once was might not be now, but there could be benefits of adding, a new gender. What does that look like? And role play that out. Give examples so not only they can be trained to hear it, but to feel it. People will never remember what you told them, but they will remember how you made them feel. Use real examples of role plays and role play it out. The situations that they've always done as a norm, and be like, well, this might not work now because we have a different gender, and the different gender might view that differently than what you have done. And we just don't want to make the differences make the difference. We want to align our universalities. What we have is universal, and to be connected as humans.
Thank you. I have one more question to you guys regarding the working schedules and minimum contract durations, which is stated on MLC. MLC says that not minimum, maximum. Sorry, maximum. 11 months. 11 months is I mean, it cannot be like this, like, it's too
And without
much.
days off.
And then, I started this topic on the chat, 6 to 6 working schedule. That's another thing that is like, yes, it complies with the MLC and STCW work rest hours regulations. That's why Port State Control usually passes out, because it just, they tick a box in the checklist, it's fine. But I would say 6 to 6 is okay to do when ship goes to port. The chief officer is busy with the cargo operations. I'm talking about conventional cargo ship. And then second and third officer do 6 to 6 for maybe a couple of days or like 24 hours. That works. But when it comes to like doing it for 3 months or 4 months, and people get sleep deprived because it's a common knowledge that is just not enough rest time. Yes, MLC says that 6 hours of consecutive rest should be provided to the seafarer, but I mean, that's not sleep. You sleep much less than that. So, do you think something should be done about that? What should be realistic maximum duration of the seafarer's contract? Not 11 months. And how to approach, especially with the small cruise ships, like when you have 20, 22 persons on board, how to approach the idea of having weekends or having time off, because people don't have this time off. And it sounds crazy when we talk about comparison with the shore approach, when we're talking about 4 days working week or 3 days working week, remote jobs. So please.
I would like to answer, yes, the human body cannot work 11 months without time off. Even 11 months is just crazy in general. The body's just not wired for that. I would like to see that change and be more realistic. Of course, when you change things, humans don't like change. We don't like uncertainty. It's very uncomfortable. What if we fail? What if? And we tend to say, oh, this won't work because of this. So we start with the negative versus the positive. And when I introduced days off on cruise ships with Holland America on my ship, I was told can't be done, can't be done. We streamlined the work. We had to reorganize how we did the whole system of guest services to accommodate the demand, because we didn't have as many people. So the supply and demand had to align. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of patience and a lot of focus. So I would say, yes, it can be done. You have to streamline and do it, but you can get days off. To the best of my knowledge, maybe Jason, you can chime in here. We're the last industry in the world to have days off. And it's not sustainable. I'm surprised we've done it as long as we've done it, but it's not attractive anyways for people want to come to see. If you can make thousands of dollars online being affiliate marketing or digital marketing or having your own shop online and making so much money, why would you want to go to sea? And that's not anomaly. That's like those are real jobs that, the younger generations are doing. Why would they want to go to sea and work every day without a day off for those long hours? So we really need to catch up on that. So my personal advocacy is to hopefully, before I die, that seafaring in maritime, there will be days off.
Well, I'll tell you what I see, again, on the port medical side, we see a large amount of cases very directly related to longer contracts, extended contracts, or often at the end of contracts, to the exhaustion of the crew, and issues developing there, at the end of contracts or after extensions of contracts. And certainly we see that on the mental health side. It is a number one, it's a consistent issue, and a large amount of the cases are directly related medically and mentally to extended contracts and long contracts. And it's just, we're always looking at all of these things. We're always looking, age, all the determinants, but the length of their contract, and it's very often, a part of the issue. Again, medically and mentally, it's directly related to that.
The research I did when I did with Holland America, And when we measured it at the beginning, middle, and end, the fatigue set in between 1.75 to 2. That's of a 12-month contract at the time. That's pretty quick.
I'd like to comment. I think we're up against time, but just to say, Alex, your questions, both the 6 on 6 off and the length of contract, both are extremely live debates and questions, as you have named them. So we hear this feedback often from seafarers, but it's challenging. I think one of the challenging things we learned also in the pandemic when seafarers were on board long time was that there were certain segment of seafarers loved it because they got to stay on board and make money longer, and there will always sort of be that pressure when you're on board and you have money, and if you go home and you don't know whether you're going to get another contract right away, just the pressure is to stay on board and make as much money as you can, and that's obviously it's maybe good for your bank account, not so good perhaps for your mental health. So
exactly, I would say it's like overeating. You can feel awesome eating some bad food, let's say some fast food, but then you won't feel so awesome after. Anyway, thank you for your
Thank you, Alex, for your question. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. I do want to invite everyone to NMEPA's annual conference, our annual Marine Environment Protection Conference and Awards Disruption and Opportunity in Maritime. Registration is open and is up on our website. So if you'd like to go check that out, please head to our website. But thank you so much this afternoon to our panelists. This was a great conversation and one that needs to happen more. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Sea Safety Series.
thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye.